Hello everyone, it's Alan at P9 Training and I am on my way into Blakelaw this morning to interview somebody very special. On my way to Blakelaw, I've stopped off at Scotswood, right at the location where they made that famous documentary in 1971 called All Dressed Up and Going Nowhere. So that might be a little bit of a clue as to who I'm going to meet very soon. Now, ever since I saw the documentary, I always wished and hoped, I thought, oh, I'd love to bump into one of those gang members and find out about life in the gang and what it was like and the kind of things they got up to. I was contacted by the grandson of one of the people that was in that video, and he said, oh, my granddad might like to speak to you. So I said, hey, great, get it arranged. So I'm on my way up to Blakelaw to meet the legendary Geordie Potter. We are going to have a conversation in a pub, and then we're going to put the conversation out as either a podcast or a video. So have a little look or a listen and see what you think. Right, well, cheers, Geordies. Thanks for arranging to meet us.
No problem.
Just before we get going properly, I'll just let people know behind there that I've been dying to speak to people who are the Scotswood Agro boys for years, because obviously I've seen the documentary. I can't remember when I seen it for the first time, but it was years ago. And then ever since then, when I kept watching it, I kept thinking, hey, I'd love to bump into one of them. Right. And fortunately, through Geordie's nephew, we managed to get put together. So
my grandson.
Geordie's grandson, Jack, put me together. And Geordie's agreed to come up with us and have a little bit crack on. So the way this is going to go is we're just going to sit and talk about it. I'm hoping to get Geordie's life story, depending on how long he's got and how many souls he can drink.
Aye.
But that'll be the crack. So Geordie, what I'll do then, I'll start off, I'll just ask you, how old are you now?
I'm 71.
So when the documentary was made, it was 1971.
I was just turned 18.
But
then.
Before that then, where were you born originally?
I was born in Blythe, Northumberland. Like Danburn.
Like that, right. And you moved down to Scotswood when? How old were you?
Moved to Elsick because my dad was a pitman. His pit shut down, and then he worked at Wallsend Rising Sun Pit on the Coast Road, and we moved to Durham Street on Elsick Road. I went to Elsick Road School. Then my mother had more kids. The house was too small, so we moved into a bigger house right on Scotswood Road, the old big terraced houses. And we lived there until they started pulling it all down.
So, Old Scotswood Road, and for people who don't know what Old Scotswood Road looked like, because the new one's just a motorway now. Old Scotswood Road was a bit different. So
really old.
So growing up as a young'un down there, what would that have been like?
Outside toilets, you know, so we were in an upstairs house, so you had the big concrete steps in the back, so in the winter time, if you wanted to, it was just no baths, we just had a tin bath hanging on the back door.
Same as us in Baker.
Aye.
I was plastic, I had a tin one. But what about the shops and stuff like that? The bars on the front, there would have been a bit of
I was too, but there was a bar on every corner. My father loved it, you know, so.
And we had a little bit of a talk early on, saying there was just all them big terraced houses, these huge houses that ran all the way down.
Yes, we lived at, ours was Amelia Street, what ran down from Buddle Road, right on there. Down Hannah Street, and Amelia Street ran across the bottom of the mall.
And what was school like? What were you like at school? Was it all right?
I was fine. I went to Elsick Road School. It'd just be more on the winter time walking to it. Up the banks and along past Elsick Cemetery and then up to Elsick Road. But it was fine. And then I went to John Morley after that. Wickham View for the first 2 years. And then the Upper School. Wester Hope.
The schools then were a bit different. It's the way they do the years now, but back then you went to lower school for the first year.
It was an old lads school and all.
All lads school?
Old lads school. The year after I left, they mixed with the lasses.
I don't even know that's a good thing or a bad thing, like, you know what I mean? But all the lasses come in. I know which one I would have preferred anyway. So, yeah, at school, you'll be at John Morley. Was that when you started getting involved in the gangs? When did yours
Yes,
start
yes,
popping up?
because we used to go to a lot of the youth clubs. Um, what I'm trying to think, the one in Atkinson Road, is it Moorside Youth Club
I don't know.
on Atkinson Road School. We used to go there. There was different. Obviously, we were going for a pint when I was 15, you know, because I was a tall lad, big lad. So we'd call an odd bars, you know, which was around Scotswood and around that area.
So your gang started coming out of the community centres that you were going to,
Yes,
and it was lads from the estates that were joining in, which
Yes,
is where you first kind of met them, right? So how did that turn into more of the Scotswood Agro boys in, rather than just meeting in the community centre?
Well, we used to. It was a good group of lads. We had known each other for years. That Laura, we went to the same school together, and we grew up. And then we used to meet, and then somebody would start a conversation. Would meet. Would go to some club, or would go somewhere. Sometimes we used to walk over Bladen, because we knew there'd be bother over there. You know, when we were 16, 17. And we used to hang around that area. And the time of that documentary being made, I remember there's a couple of blokes turned up and they said, "We're from the BBC, such and such, such and such. We've heard about your name and we would like to interview some of you." And we says, "Right, fine."
So they'd heard about your names. So they'd heard about your name being the Scotswood Agro
Aye.
boys, because you had it daubed everywhere and stuff
Oh,
like that.
yes,
Everywhere you went,
aye,
you could see it. Me being from my neck of the woods, we still knew who the Scotswood Agro boys were. So at some point, somebody must have came across and done it. But the Long Benton Agro boys and the Scotswood Agro boys were the two that would see it everywhere. How did the Scotswood Agro boys get its name, and who named it? Who said, right, we are the Scotswood Agro boys?
It was just, we heard the Agro were boys, but then again, there was, it wasn't just all about boys. We had a group of lasses what would be coming and all, and some of them were just as bad as the boys, you know. And it was like, what did you call them? We'd put SAB, SAB, and then they would put it on the SAG,
Aye.
you know. But some of the lasses, I mean, we all had girlfriends and all that and blah blah, and it was just one of them things. And then I think we got bored being in our own area because there was very little in Scotswood to do. So that's why we used to venture out.
And again, it's mentioned in the documentary about the community centres, and I think it's easy going, no, there's name, we have to go on to other ones. You might have to go up to Mill Lane again, but even there, you know, the other ones.
Mill Lane was out the way, but we liked it up there.
But all the gang members I've been talking to are very similar stories. They're in their areas and they kind of meet up in these places and just gradually came into it. So when you eventually started hanging out doing them areas, you mentioned hanging by the Scotswood Bridge. How many roughly was kind of the hardcore group? How many was there?
Oh, it depends what we're going to do. It was like, sometimes there'd be 10, dozen. And then other times at the weekends or whatever, there'd be 20, 25, 30 we're hanging about. And then we'd decide what we're going to do. Then things were like, we'll go to the town. And we'd like the town more, the Hoppins, as I say. And it was just, and we expected trouble because no matter where we went, there'd be trouble. And we knew that, but we just didn't care. We just didn't. It was like misspent youth, and we just didn't. It was the same when we started to go the whole away matches. I know it sounds stupid. Sometimes we never had transport, but somebody would go out and punch a van. Right, then we'd have transport to go away, and we just didn't care. We'd go away. No matter where we went, we would just go in the end, and then just kick off, or go to the bar. And a few would always be arrested, always, and we're getting arrested at, you know, the likes of. I like to get arrested in Sheffield because I loved Sheffield, the town centre. I could tell some good stories in there, like where our fines doubled from like £40 to £80 for laughing, you know. And but as I say, it was just we just didn't give a care. I mean, then we never had phones, right? Because my mother, who worked at the old Savoy Bingo on the corner of Elsick Park, and when I used to go away, I would, if I got arrested, the police would always ask, "You got a phone?" Well, I says, "Well, I've got my ma's work for it, so they let me phone my mum over work. We've got your son George arrested here, locked up. He's okay, but he's at emergency court on Monday and blah blah." And that's the way it used to be.
But you're saying you just didn't care. Some of the kind of things, what kind of things would the lads do when you were hanging about together?
It was mainly a laugh. Do you know, a lot of it was would dare each other, stupid stuff.
To do what kind of things?
You know, like, I remember one year when little Gipper, bless him, he's not here now, went over the arch of Scotswood Bridge. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
It is. I mean, it is unbelievable now. Obviously, this is going to be out on there, and people are going to hear these things, and some people will think, no way, that's not possible. But back in those times, people had no fear.
Yeah, well, you didn't. They had no fear whatsoever.
People didn't know what fear was, I don't think. We found that out now. Kids are a lot more informed now, but back then you didn't think anything would ever happen to anybody.
No.
So these are 16, 17-year-old, and you've got kids being dead to run over the top of the Scotswood Bridge, which is canny high if anyone hasn't ever seen it. And then you're going to away matches. So at what age did you start going to the football away?
I just got all the home matches from when I was really young. Some of the first away matches I went to were 14, and then 15, 16, 17, and that's when you went there and you were getting the bother, because then you'd get people who would push in, shove you in, or you would just go with the mentality that, right, if he looks at me, I'm going to jump him, I'm going to have him.
It's just to try for people to try to remember the times as well. In the late 1960s, early 1970s, we're talking St James's Park. It was all standing pretty much, you know. Anybody went in the East Stand at some point in the 70s, didn't they? The old stand was there.
Well, at times,
it never went up, but you all stood shoulder to shoulder.
Well, at times in the Leazes end, you'd have all of the groups from all over the different estates. That's what I call it, like Long Benton, Big Lamb. They'd all be in the Leazes end. And if we had anybody to fight, the away fans or whatever, they'd end up fighting each other.
So when, I mean, I still don't know fully how that looked. I've been in a match since 1981, since I've been gone, but I don't know how that worked out, because obviously the Leazes end was a lot bigger then. So if you are going in different groups, would you just have your little areas within the Leazes and that were kind of yours?
We used to always make our way in the middle, further doing what they'd call it, and then there'd be, say, the group of Long Benton and a group there. You know, so we'd all be more or less in the same vicinity. And, but to tell you the truth, it didn't happen very often. And a lot of, then I would say the away matches, we used to help each other out. You know, you were a Geordie then, you know, and you'd help each other out. If we went to certain bars and there was kick-offs, you know, everybody would be into it. Because you were classes, and you had Geordies.
But then you come back on the week, and through the week you see each other, you have a go with each other.
But later on, as we got older and all, I think a lot of the local lads from different gangs, they used to talk each other. Now you'd bump into them. Always. I mean, as I say now, when I go to, I bump into people what, you know, years ago, but we always talk, we always have a bit of laugh and crack, you know, so it's, but you can laugh about it now, you know, when you think about it. I just say, oh, misspent youth, that's what I say, but I wouldn't change it.
But no,
I wouldn't change it.
I mean, gangs aren't a new thing as well. They've been run since time began. I mean, they've got history from Roman times. The Roman gangs used to go to the Colosseum, the chariot racing, and they would have different teams, and they would have riots and stuff. So they've always been there. And I think the things that they're trying to put across in documentaries and stuff like that, you get these social experts who come on, and they try and work with all these things about why people were in gangs and that. Now, all the gang members I speak to, it's nearly all the same. Because they wanted to hang out with a group of lads and they liked doing it. That's roughly it. You know, they were loyal to their areas and they liked being there and they felt something from that, so they just wanted to be in the gangs and had forged all these friendships on the estates and stuff like that. But then when you start looking at how many there was, I mean, you're talking we're still in the very early 70s, yeah. How many gangs do you reckon you would have none of that you could have on the estates?
I could have advanced in them, but everybody just made a different name up at times and all. But it was unlimited, the numbers, man.
I've seen them. I've got lists of them, and I put them on there. And every time I put a list on, there's somebody else puts one, and it's either Denton Agro boys, North Kent, North Shields Agro boys. But then they started changing their names when films came in. I've got
if there's a fallout with a couple of lads, that's what they're getting. Now they'll split.
Yeah, did they?
Aye.
I wasn't aware of that. So you'd have a gang within a gang, like.
Aye. That's what some of them used to do. But no, and I mean, as I see it, just see it for instance when I went to 1974 FA Cup final when we were playing Liverpool. I mean, we had a minibus. We went to in there, and we got there at Wembley. It was about 5 in the morning or whatever. And soon as it was daylight, we were playing football in the car park with the Liverpool fans, 100 a side. 100 a side. You know, and it was like, there wasn't a pick of bother.
I was going to say, was it friendly enough?
Not a pick of bother. I think there was more bother later on that day. Because for instance, like, it's funny, I can laugh now. Me and my pal, John Taylor and Freddie Taylor, his brother, we went into London after the game. And we went to the Odeon in Leicester Square. We were walking past and the Rubettes was on. You know the Rubettes? Sugar Baby Love?
I do remember them.
And we're looking, we knew, because they were number 1 in 1974 with a hit. So anyway, John went down the side of the lane and all that, and he went, pushed it, and it opened. So we went in. So we got inside there, and then they were on the stage. So me and John jumped up on the stage. So the lead singers, they wore white suits with the caps. I took the cap off the lead singer, right? John done the same with one of the guitarists, and again, fuck off, you Geordie bastards. But they were still singing, they were only miming. They were still singing the song. I wouldn't have that. But there was no such thing as like bouncers and that on the front of the stage like now and all that, you know.
I wonder if there's any footage of that out there on the YouTube somewhere, you know, when bands get recorded, because it was number 1. And was it Bye Bye Baby, that was the number 1 single?
Sugar Baby Love.
Sugar Baby Love.
Sugar Baby Love.
I wonder if there's out there. But that wouldn't have been your kind of music though, because the Skinheads...
Oh, we went from music to music. I mean, I used to have like reggae. I love Motown. I always look, I'm always gone away on holiday and I always look for the Motown bars and the ska bars to go to because I like the music. So basically that's what we do. But as I say, it's happy memories of it all. You know, I've got some. I could tell you loads of stories.
Well, you know what? We might have a part 2 depending on whether you give us some time again. But
in
the 60s and 70s, obviously the skinheads and the rude boys and all that developed from the Jamaican stuff, and they brought a lot of the music with them. But the styles these were wearing. Can you remember how that came about and where you started seeing that kind of stuff and why you started wearing DMs and the Crombies and getting the shaved heads?
Well, I saw pictures, I think it was from 68 and 69, of pictures of lads, them look smart, them. And then when the lads got together, they thought the same, you know, and then when we would meet up down Scotchy, because where we used to knock about at Scotchy Bridge, you had the Boozer, the Robin Adair right next to it. And somebody would always come down, oh, you see me new Doc Martens, and different colours, and people were coming down, you know, with a the braces and the checky Ben Showman and the Harrington and that's the way. And then everybody used to follow suit, and then people were coming doing with Crombies, and that's the way it started.
I mean, it's the skinheads as well. They've got
But we're
a
fun.
bad rap because he's had your heat shaved.
But we found out that there was a lot of like bars, went to bars they wouldn't let win because they automatically thought, oh, they're not trouble and we're going to cause trouble. So, and I says, oh, because we're not a hairy, that's why you had the hairies and skinheads. It was, oh, we're going to this hairy bar or whatever.
So the skinheads, obviously, it does look, you do look harder than the hairies, but obviously there's a lot of hard cases because they've got long hair.
We used to get, I used to like T-Rex, not T-Rex music, and we went to City Hall to watch where all these hairies were in front of her, where we were just pulling our hair.
But I mean, in that hairy gang, you see them in the documentary as well. I'm not, there was just one gang up, there's quite a few of them in the maybe joined together. But
them were the main ones because they drank in the town as well, and they drove about the town on their bikes and stuff like that. But as I see, it was just to me, it might sound daft, but just give us something to do, and. There was a kind of bit bother in the tune. We'd gone to certain bars, and obviously there'd be bother. And we had our certain bars in the town, and people would come in, and then there'd be kick-offs.
But you actually enjoyed it. You enjoyed doing the thrill of the fight and all that kind of stuff. And I think some people cannot understand why people would do that.
I mean,
right? They think, why would you do that? Why would you not do that? Well, maybe people are into different things, and people enjoy it.
Right. They were, and as I say, good set of lads. And as I say, a lot of them is not here now.
So when did that, so we're still kind of early 70s and that, football's big there, 74 and that, and Wembley and stuff. When did the gang start kind of fizzling out for you? When did you kind of start distancing yourself from it and doing other stuff?
Well, as I say, I still went to all the away matches, but maybe with different lads. I went because some of the lads I got married pretty young, and I'm starting to have kids, and then, I mean, but then again there was one. I'll tell you this story. A lot of people know it. I was sent to the fish shop. This was with my first wife, who I've got me 3 daughters to get our supper. And I went in my slippers, and the lads were outside in the minibus to go to Tottenham. And they're saying, Geordie, how are you coming to that? She says, oh, I've got no money. I said, blah, blah, blah. I jumped on the bus Friday. So I ended up down Tottenham with my slippers. No money. She's phoned the police, the hospital's up and everything. Then she got told, well, there's some lads was, and then she twigged where I was. I mean, but there was no things like mobile phones, where to get in contact and things. So anyway, I ended up there down there on a Friday. We used to go, I said, I need to get some shoes, and I kind of walk away with slippers, like. And in the bars, there'd be these, the Durex machines.
Aye.
Gripping the Durex machines and getting the money. So I bought myself a pair of shoes in the shop anyway. So anyway, eventually when we got back, and I goes home on the Sunday, and I knocks on the door, and she come to the door, and I just said, I says, there's a hell of a queue at the fish shop. And then she clouted us. But she knew where I was. But after that was happening, she had been on the phoning hospitals up and police and everything.
I tell you what,
a lot of people know that story, and I was on about it.
That's a story. You could get away with things them days, these days it's a bit different. They kind of get away with it. So after that, when do you reckon it was that you just had nothing to do with the gangs anymore completely?
It wasn't that I didn't have.
So you were still going to the matches and
I was still
seeing
going to,
people.
I was still going to the bars because
So was this more on the weekends and seeing
I
the graft through the week?
I wouldn't go out as much. And I was still playing pool now for the pool teams for the different bars, and I was still seeing the same lads years after and all that. But we just weren't. If there was bother, we'd show up, get together. But a lot of people just started, and then they were married and they were having kids, and then you didn't see each other as much, you know. And I think that's what I think anyway. I think you thought, oh well, I don't want to get into bother. I've got kids, and
It's what a lot of people said was
you know,
exactly the same thing in the last
and stuff like that.
The last video I made.
But I would still see them, but we just didn't do the daft things. We like grew up a bit quicker.
Aye. Was any of the lads? Did they still want to be involved in gangs? So they actively kept
There
doing
was
it
still
and look for
some of the
other
lads.
things?
Some of the lads got jail and stuff like that, and were still getting arrested for things. But I just wanted to get rid of it, you know.
It seems like from what most people and what you're kind of saying as well is exactly the same thing. Them early 70s gangs is all quite young, and by the time they get to the late 70s, you're all a little bit out of work, and you've got your kids and all that, and not that you haven't got time, but you haven't got time to be getting nicked all the time, I suppose, and run up
Plus
something
money,
in your slippers.
plus money, you're not paying fines, and
it's exactly the same what everybody's kind of said to us, and then by the time we get to about 1980-ish, it sounds like a lot of the formal gangs with names were kind of gone, but there was still a few different ones. Gangs like the West End and Wild Bunch were a bit later on, and then gangs like the Sham Army and stuff kept it on. And from what I've been told, some of the skinheads who really wanted to keep going kind of joined in with other gangs and kept going. But inside the Scotswood Agro boys, what another thing I'm dead interested in as well as other gangs. When they talk about gangs, like you listen to anybody that tell you they're experts on gangs and all that, they say it's kind of formal, but it's not. You didn't elect leaders, you didn't sit down and have a vote in who's in charge. So with the Scotswood Agro boys, who would decide who was doing what? How would you decide? Was it
it wasn't just somebody would say, right, we're going to do this. I would say, oh, we're going to do that. Or somebody would start the bother and the rest would just join in.
Right.
You know, and that's the way it was. That's the way it was.
Inside the gang, was there anybody that was more respected than the others? They were the ones that you hoped would have run when it happened?
I thought we're all close in Scotswood because we knew each other, you know, and they were all good lads, you know, we were there for each other, mainly, you know, we're there for each other. If somebody had the bother, or if like a couple of times they might have been jumped on when they've been on their own somewhere, and then would show up, get together, and then go and get it sorted, you know, and things like that. There was always.
And you mentioned the town war before. I've heard a lot about the town war being a gathering place for gangs to have fights. So you mentioned that you were going up there. Is it, from your experience, was that the kind of thing that you would see there?
Yes, couple of times. A lot of times I've been up there. There've been a few, there's been no bother, but I've been a couple of times up there, 2-3 times, and there's been bother. But it's been sharp, finished, over and done with. But as I say, it's been 2 or 3 times when I've been at the town where there's been bother, but the rest of the time, no.
And I keep going back to the documentary, because when you do talk about the documentary, it properly pictures you in time, right there. You know what I mean? And you said you said you made the one documentary in '71, and they made a follow up in between. When was that? 2015,
Something like that.
9-10 years ago.
The BBC.
You made a follow up, but in between, they had came back to us. Somebody else had came back to us for another documentary, didn't they? Not long after the first one. What was the crack there with that?
Well, the crack, I'm sure it was Geordies or something. I can't remember the name, but I know it was like split in two, because it was, the other half of it was about, what I can remember, there was I think it was like a nudist camp at Throckley. Honestly, there was a nudist camp at Throckley, somewhere in the trees in the field, in farmer's field, and they were like half the documentary was about them because they were playing tennis and everything, but everything was like blocked out. And the other half was about us. They paid for us to go to Whitley Bay, now to go to the Spanish city, and they put a coach on forward, and they were sent with a bar. They would have a good drink. Really, what they were wanting was to kick off and stuff like this, you know. But it didn't happen. But we had a good day, and all the beer was bought. So
And that's vanished now. That cannot be. You didn't know where that is.
But I'm sure it was on ITV, Tinties, but as I say, I'm forgetting the name of it, but that's what it was. It was half about us, the Scotswood Agro, and then half about the nudist place at Throckley.
It's a shame, but you can't get that one because obviously you only made it the once, and if you've never seen it, you've never seen it. I mean, what do you think now when you look back at yourself on camera? Is it hard to watch? Is it easy to watch? Does it feel like it's not?
Sometimes I'm like that because I can see my grandsons in me, you know, like when because when they done the follow up to see what it's like now in the club, because my mum was still alive then, my dad was the, and she says, "Oh, your mum still would like for you to come." So they've done it on the stage in the Legion Club, Blakelaw Legion Club, and my mum. She says, "Oh, your daughter, we'll have your daughter and your grandson up and like asking questions. Oh, what would you do if your grandson take after you?" I says, "I'd knock him out." You know?
I'd see it.
I says he hasn't got a bad bone. I says it's just as well I had 3 lasses, you know, and as I say that was good. It made us think, but like I said, I says I would never change it. I would never change. I've had a good life, and I'm still here, and a lot of me pals aren't.
Everybody says that, you know. Every single gang
a
member I speak to,
lot of me pals is
they
not
wouldn't
here.
change it.
Right, and I think it's made us a more streetwise and a better person, you know, because I've seen that side of things, and now I see this side of things, you know, as I'm getting older, and I think I'm a better person for it.
No, you will be. I'm certain as well. It's exactly the same. We share a lot of our stuff with schools and the people we work with, or people that have been involved with stuff, because you've seen it and you can share all them kind of experiences and the do's and the don'ts. And I mean, these days is different. Just one more thing. I'll just take it back in time. One more thing before I ask you just a little bit on what's happening now in the future, and if you've got any thoughts on the current kind of gangs and the way off you're not out about them. But when you watch back in time, your dad, your mum and dad, at the time they didn't really realise what you were into. Well, I'm assuming at some point they then found out.
They didn't know.
Because were you 17-year-old in that documentary?
18. I just turned 18 when it come out on it.
And you were still at home?
I was still at home.
And you were in
I was still at home.
You were in Blakelaw.
It was like, if I was in the tune, or what I call it, if I was covered in blood and stuff like that, I'd always knock on my neighbours next door because I knew them. They would clean us all up before I went the house. So yeah,
because obviously when they've done the documentary, they're doing your bit, and they're speaking to them, and they haven't got a clue, and they're saying, if he come in like this, you know what I mean, you're not bringing a Forrester water, and then you watch.
Well, he had turned around and I'd give them the birch.
Aye, but it's the way he says it. You know, like you can't give him the birch.
Well, because he's from Bebside Bly, he had a proper pit yakka.
Ah, that explains the accent.
That's high. Proper pit yakka.
I can hear it now.
His was a Northumbrian accent, my father. Everybody used to love to hear him talk because, you know, a table was a treble.
Aye.
You know, but Northumbrian accent.
I didn't realise. I can pick it now. I've thought, wow, back in the 70s, the Scotswood accent's really broad, because as soon as he says it, give him the borch. And it's the way he says it, and it puts it right back there. But it was great to see them on there, especially not now. And then he's all running in the background, daring your pals to run over bridges and stuff like that. But past all that, we get into the 80s, obviously things changed. The gangs as we know them kind of vanished off and started changing, and we saw the newer gangs coming through. And I know what people say about the newer gangs. You had the dressers and stuff like that. The Bender Squad was formed out of old skinhead gangs apparently, and the NME were football gangs. And then the Gremlins came along, and I think that originally they were calling them the Pretty Jumper Squad, because they all had nice yellow Lacoste jumpers and things on, and they used to make fun of them a bit. But that's one of our biggest gangs in the city now to this day. There's hundreds of them combined, from all over the place. So back then, it was lots of individual skinhead gangs for areas, but new, like so the Gremlins, they've got people in from everywhere. But you've still got your local gangs. Do you know anything about the gangs these days? Have you got any thoughts on them? Do you know much about what's going on with them? Not so much the Gremlins, I'm thinking your other street gangs that you know of them.
Well, them are more like a city gang.
Aye.
They're more like a city gang. And obviously the Newcastle lads, Newcastle fans and blah blah. And it's just like every other city is they're more like city gangs.
Definitely, aye. So there's kids from Heaton, West End, East End, North Shields.
I know kind of few people who won the Gremlins and stuff like that.
A lot of my friends went out here from the age of 15, 16.
I mean, I can understand representing the city, when I was Newcastle, because I was daft. Well, I still am Newcastle daft. I'll be watching a match of the night.
They have got the season tickets. But apparently, from what I've heard, when your gangs all start fizzling out, you came together more, and it became more the football thing. So it stemmed from the skinhead stuff. But now what you've got as well.
And plus, it's all the mobile phones. You can just phone up and say, look, can we bother here? Get the lads. Phone this one up. All right, we'll meet you there. And then all of a sudden, you've got 100 there.
Well, we just might have touched on it then. How did you know where to meet? You just had one place where it was the gathering point.
It was just through speech itself.
And people would just have to tell each other, can't do that at 7 o'clock. But I mean, the kind of gangs we're seeing now is completely different to what you were. We kind of call these street gangs, kids who got together on their streets in their communities, just who like to go out and do things and get involved and bother. It wasn't for criminal gain or out like that. It wasn't for, you weren't really gaining from it, or you just enjoyed doing it and being in a gang. The gangs now on the estates, what we're seeing now, the young ones coming through now are different. It's all about drugs, money, bling, and you're seeing a lot more weapons injuries. You'll hear about and see it on the telly. I don't know what's it like around Blakelaw where you live. What's it like around there?
A lot of young'uns around the shopping areas and stuff like that. Sit and fight the bins and all, shop bins and all that, the big ones. And I just run wild at times. But you've still got them, there was about a couple of months ago, there was loads of gangs of young'uns. They're only like 13, 14, coming over from West Denton. And Cause and Bother and Blakelaw. So there's still loads of shite going on.
But I mean, the policing's different these days as well. When you were young'uns, I'm assuming you would have had your local police officer on the beat.
Right. Well, I remember in Amelia when I lived in Amelia, so when I was young, getting kicked up the arse up the police. And battered across the back. We just let that go, so, but they can't do like that, no.
We had one round our way in bike, Big Mick he was called, and he would regularly clout people or give them a dig. He would give them the option, do you want to be arrested or do you want to be digged? I hope he's not still running, I'm getting him in any bother there, but the policing know's different as well. Do you ever see any kind of police on the estates other than when something's happened?
Well, all I see is young lads, honestly, they seem to be getting younger. And loads of, they do a good job, and loads of women police officers, young lasses. And they've must enough reduced the heights rule.
Don't do it anymore, nothing really used to be. I used to be 5'10".
Now when some of them, I've seen some of them when I've went for my papers in the morning, there's been some bother, some and they've been asking for the the film footage in the spa, and I've been standing next to them and I'm like, height of my shoulder below, you know, but the last Paris lass.
And you think to yourself,
and you think
if this went up,
aye,
what could they do? Especially back.
because my dad always wanted me to be a police. He said, I'd love you to be a policeman, son.
You reckon you would have made a good one?
Oh, I don't know.
Have you got the patience for it?
Nah.
People getting in your face and pushing you?
Nah. I couldn't keep my hand out.
So these days that you, obviously you're very, you love the tune. You love your kids, your grandkids.
Aye.
You've got your family and that there.
Got my great-grandkids now.
Great grandkids. How old are they? So is that,
Well,
sorry, we've mentioned Jack's name a couple of times. I hope he doesn't mind. Are these Jack's kids?
I've got me, Jack's my oldest grandson, he's 30.
Aye.
And then he's got two brothers, twins, me, that's two Will and Lloyd. That's four Beverly's. Then Jenny's got Oliver. And Taylor, my granddaughter, she's had Isaac, my great-grandson. He'll be 5 in February, and she's just had my great-granddaughter 8 weeks ago, when I was on holiday in Tenerife.
Ah, well, you've done well there to remember all them and getting them up the top of your head like that.
Well, it's the names and all, because you've got Isaac George, you've got Will George, you've got Oliver George, Ollie. So my name's hiding in with them. So.
And the kids, and all the kids, the grandkids and that, your kids, all the lassies, but your grandkids, none of them have been involved in any kind of...
No.
No at all?
No.
So you're the only one?
I would say something to say, so...
Do you think that was maybe... it's just different having girls. I've got 2 girls and a laddie, and it is different, isn't it?
Oh,
lassies,
yes.
I
was used to lassies. That's
stuff.
why when I had my great-granddaughter, I was just starting to hold on my arms, you know, so it's just what you get used to, really. But I mean, I love all my grandsons, the bits. I mean, Mo Jack's a lovely lad, my oldest one. He was down at the weekend. I think he's coming during the fortnight for the Sunderland game.
Aye.
I think we're going down the tune to watch it.
I'm aware we're in the West Midlands for the other halves from the West Midlands who are down there that weekend because it's away. Obviously, if it was at home, we've got no chance of getting tickets for the game. But so that's your life now then. Your grandkids, your great grandkids.
Oh, I love going
watching the football.
I love going doing the tune. I mean, I was a season ticket holder for 30 odd year, and I packed it in been 9 seasons ago through Ashley.
Just before the ticket.
And I went. And I was watching. I could go and watch the match. You know, watch the matches on the dodgy fire stick anywhere and have a drink in bars and clubs. And that's what I was doing. So.
And all the grandkids, the laddies and the lassies, are all tune fans. I'm
assuming.
Yes,
aye.
So they got that bit from you.
Oh yes,
not allowed to be nowhere else.
They had me because when they were all born, the first thing I bought them was a Newcastle strip. The laddies, I got them their strips. Even the last year. And I got them my first football boots and everything.
I mean, to kind of finish it up, I could talk to you all day. And looking back on this, when I come back with this, I'm going to look through all of it, and I'm going to come back to you again. I'm not going to pest you. I'm not a pest, but I'm going to come back to you, and I think I might have some more things for you. I would love to, because I bet you've got loads more. And this was just dead informal.
You would have to be here always for the story. I would tell you.
But just this first part, this has been dead informal. Just for everyone that might see it, you know, there's been no script and out involved here. We've pretty much just started doing. It's the first time I've met you in person. But the last thing I always ask people, every single time, from where you are now, and you've already said it in between, but I'm going to do it again. From where you are now and looking back there, would you do it all again?
I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. It's been emotional. It's part. Out I would change. Nah, not really.
No.
I was with some good lads, some really, really good lads, and as I say, a lot of them's not here. I still see some pretty regular in the tune.
I was going to ask you.
I'll go into bars where I know them in the tune, and they'll come in, you know. First thing we do, we'll give each other a cuddle.
And do you ever reminisce? Did you ever talk with them deals?
Aye,
Are you done with it now?
there's a couple of lads and all that have done. You know, you remember the day, Geordie, I went on.
Obviously, I'm telling you, that's 54 years since that documentary. And it's the first time I've ever met you, so it's like fresh in my head. You'd have went through these things a million times. We were pals before.
Oh, is I say in an art, but the amount of people are on the tune, you know, and people just call to me and says, "Oh, Geordie, how late?" I went, yeah, God damn it. She says, "Oh, you." He says, "You knocked me out, man, 40-odd fucking year ago." You know, it's not, I was starting laughing, I was going, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." You know, and it's, but no, it's all, "You all right, Geordie?" But, you know, we're all getting old, but as I say, there's a lot of lads what's not here.
I think that's it. That is one of the differences from what we're seeing these days compared to then. Obviously, weapons were used back in the day, but not like they are now.
Oh, no.
Back then, you would give each other a dig and a slap, and that would be it. You'd have a few stitches. Then in the future, you'll see each other and remind yourselves and have a laugh about it. But the way they're going now with the weapons and stuff, it's final. You know, that's it. You've never got that chance to go on ahead in the future and bump into someone and say, "Remember when I had that scrap?" Which for me, that makes the 70s. 70s is probably a unique decade in time. We'll never see the likes of that
No.
ever again, because he's had new phones, he's had new ways of communicating. It was just a coming together in certain places, and then you would go and do things. Now with CCTV, mobile phones, tracking devices everywhere you go, and they know exactly who you are. You could step at your front door and they'd have you straight away. So we'll never see the likes of them times again, which is why I keep going back to them at the minute, just to try to get as much as I can. Or people say in the future, when they look at this, they'll be thinking, "That never happened. Anybody went over the top of there. You're digging people. You went to talk to them in your hair. Slippers."
Aye, what does that say? It's just one of them things. I see, I used to always put it to know that I go, misspent youth.
I don't know if it is misspent though, because if you look back and you've said, "I wouldn't change it,"
I wouldn't.
Then it was reach for you at that time. It wasn't misspent. You were doing the things that were reach for you. So
Obviously. I mean, we all played football. Look at that, man. Some of the things when we were playing football, we used to go to Elswick Road Park and play. Maybe it's about 30 aside, you know, on a Sunday we were all bad with a drink. We were spewing all over the football pit. And same up, we used to always gone up to Pender, the back of St Cuthbert's School. There's a big green, we used to always play football there. You know, all the lads would just, you know, it's, it was, as I say, it was, can't forget, all the lads what's gone, you know, I can see all their faces. If I look at that wall, I can see all their faces. Who's gone? No longer.
And not just the people as well. I suppose when I get on about things, every time I talk to anybody, I talk about Baker. Because growing up in Baker was exactly like Scotswood, the old terraced houses and all that. And I loved the place growing up. And it's not like that anymore. It's different.
Well,
they took your area away from you, you know. That was, for me, was one of the biggest things.
I had family that lived in old Raby Street.
Aye.
They moved from Blythe to Raby Street. It's a short move back to Blythe.
Well, Raby Street was was Kirk Street, which ran down. So Raby Street was the main one on Shields Road to Walker Road, and all the other ones that ran down. We were Kirk Street. We were born on the top of Kirk Street. And you mentioned you used to work with the Water Company.
Aye.
I lived on Allendale Road, which was on the back of it, and the community centre was where my mum used to run all the youth clubs for the kids. So she had all the kids in there. I was going up, and all the skinheads were in. We didn't want any bother, you know what I mean? It was great. It was a great place growing up. But when all the kids then, everybody got dispersed, and pretty much they all filter back towards it, and even the ones who got put out, they all come back to Baker. They drink there and meet there, and got this like affiliation with it that they kind of get rid of.
I mean, it's the same like in a tunnel. I've gone the same. Like I'll still gone to the Beehive. I've always gone to the Beehive. I've drunk there I've drunk there for 50 years. The Beehive. I've gone to the. I used to drink in the Lowther. It's opened again. And it's back to the being in the Lowther. That's its name. I gone to the Lowther. I gone to the Mayfair. Boozer, and then you've got the Canny Lad, what used to be Lennon's.
Oh, Jesus.
You know, I know if I'm walking past the clock, I can't look at the clock because I know a lot of lads in there. You know, so...
Good balls. Good balls.
Aye, and I'm that type of person, but I'll not forget where I'm from.
So, right, well, you were born in Blythe. You've lived along Cowgate for a bit. Elswick Road. You lived in Cowgate for a bit. You lived in Blakelaw. You were in Scotswood. So where you were in the Scotswood Agro boys, where would you think, where, if you tell people where you're from, where do you closely associate with the most?
I loved living on the Cowgate side in Meadowdale Crescent, because when we went in there, everybody stood because it was the first house with a bath in, the proper bath, and it had one of them, I remember the pork ray fires.
The ones
inside,
with
and you just put the gas poker and you put the coke in, the gas poker underneath the set, and that's it.
Oh no, I can't remember them.
It was called a pork ray fire
because
because we had the coal fire in Elswick Road, Dunn Street. Well, me being the oldest of 6 kids, I was, during the night and all that, I was sent down to the coal house to get the bucket of coal. You know, in the winters and stuff like that. It was me when I used to have to get the old ashes out, chop the sticks or whatever for the fire, and then put the blazer on up. If the blazer was knackered or whatever, you put the shovel now with a newspaper to cover it, so the chimney draws all the...
Tell you what, there's going to be people looking at this, you know, thinking, what's cool? Right, I haven't got a clue.
Well, the thing there, when my father being a pitman, used to get his coal for nothing, was part of the job.
Ah, you're cool.
So that's why Waver's had a hot fire.
See, that was at a hot fire. No, that's great, that one, honestly. I think what I'm going to do then, if you don't mind, we'll just wrap it up there.
All right.
And I'm going to go away. I'm going to put this out in some format, just for people to come and have a little look. I'm going to have a think about it, and I'm probably going to come back to you, Geordie, and I'm probably going to ask you
I've got
stories. You've got the time for this, you know what I mean?
Umpteen stories, funny ones, you know, funny ones.
I hope you enjoyed that. Geordie Potter from the Scotswood Agro Boys, a little bit of his life story and being in gangs and stuff. Now, Geordie's already agreed to meet us for a second time, where he's going to tell us some of his stories, or lots of his stories hopefully, about being away with the gangs, going away to football matches, being arrested, some of the fights they got involved in. So thank you for checking in, and we'll see you next time.